Welcome back to today's episode, the podcast where we talk about a new installment of a different series every show. Today is Monday, November 13th, the same day, 83 years ago, that Disney released Fantasia. Now, both Fantasia and Culprits, the miniseries we're here to discuss, are available on Disney+. But that is where the similarities end, because Culprits is not for kids. It's a live-action, time-hopping heist story, a British production developed by J Blakeson. J Blakeson happened to co-write the sequel to one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Do you want to guess which one?
Well, I know you like Cabin in the Woods,
it's British.
Oh, The Descent?
The Descent, perfect. He did the sequel to it, so it wasn't nearly as good. He also directed the critically panned but box office smash science fiction feature, The Fifth Wave.
Oh,
I didn't even remember
the Chloe Grace Moretz movie?
Yes, you know it better than I do, but I didn't know that it was actually, like, it made money.
Yeah, I think it came out in January of 2013.
I think it was a couple years later. I think it was
Later?
like 2015 or something like that. And then most recently, he wrote and directed the Netflix Rosamund Pike thriller, I Care a Lot. Do you remember that one? It had Peter Dinklage in it, and it was like a very dark comedy, I think. And I just wanted to acclimate you to the guy before we jump into this project, because it's not unheard of for a creator of a series to also direct, write, and showrun the episodes.
Yes.
We've seen it with Taylor Sheridan, Mike Flanagan, David Lynch. Lena Dunham did it for the first few episodes of Girls. But what's weird about it here is that the reason that those creators have their hands on it is because it's their baby. They're the ones going on to pitch it. They're the ones who are sticking their necks out on the line to get it made. They're the ones who found, researched, incubated the idea.
Right.
But that's not the case with J Blakeson. J Blakeson was handed the reins to this project by his friend, the executive producer, Stewart-Jarrett. He has his own production company.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's done, I think The Night Agent was his big claim to fame.
Okay.
But he purchased the rights to the book that Culprits is thinly based on. Culprits, The Heist was just the beginning. And now, did this show feel like it came from a book? Or that it was adapted from a book?
No, I mean, there's a lot that's going on, so I can see kind of where... Actually, one question is, does it focus the book on one main character?
No, it does not. But the thing about the book is, here's the abstract to it. It's about a maelstrom of what happens when a hard-bitten crew of professional thieves pull off the score of their lives, coming away with $7 million in swag. That's when the real trouble begins, because in a linked anthology of stories written by more than a handful of writers, we follow each member of the crew of Culprits as they go their separate ways after the heist and watch as the perfect score becomes the perfect nightmare. Now, what J Blakeson and Stewart-Jarrett did was they took that abstract and they extended it themselves. They didn't wait for the book to come out. They didn't really read it too much. They didn't go into high detail. This is not based off that story.
Okay.
It's based off the premise. And so from there, they took it, and from what I was reading, it said J Blakeson considers Joe the linchpin of the series. He is the main character, and he is played by Nathan Stewart-Jarrett. Now,
Who carries the episode.
Yes, he seems to be the biggest name. I was surprised to see him show up after so many years after seeing Misfits. I didn't know he was in the Candyman movie. I didn't know he was also in the British version of Utopia. He looks a little different.
I did not recognize him at all. You could have given me 1,000 people. I never would have guessed that he was Curtis from Misfits before watching
He
this
has
thing.
really long dreadlocks now, and he bulked up, right?
Yes.
For the series, because he's technically the muscle.
Yes, that's his nickname. If there was one word I could use to describe this show, it would be disjointed, however. Because there's so many things that happens to Joe in the first episode, I don't even know which one the show wants us to focus on the most.
Which character or which...
which storyline? For example,
Okay.
the beginning of the episode, Marcello Bari, he has this mansion, he has a ton of cars, and this is when you said that this isn't going to be a kid show. And you know that from the first scene because there's a hitman who gives him a headshot straight to the face and his brain suddenly splatters on the gravel and part of his car. And that's why I was like, this is supposed to be on Disney Plus? Like, what is going on here?
Well, you were on Disney Plus, but yeah.
So you would think that that would be where the episode is supposed to take place. Maybe we would learn more about Marcello Bari for the rest of the episode. No, that doesn't come into play until the very last
You thought the
scene.
dead guy, you would get a backstory to him?
Or something. Like, why would they start it off that way? That's what I was wondering. But then we switch entirely. We learn very on that Joe Petrus, he is someone that has a kid. kid. He also is married to someone named Jules as well. He's bought this old convenience store and wants to turn it into a bistro. And then we get 10 minutes of him trying to get a liquor license and failing to do so. And I was thinking, all right, well, now we're going to focus on him just trying to kind of re-up this thing.
Yeah, so what do you think his deal was? Like, you knew there was going to be some form of connection to the first scene, but you're seeing this guy live out a humdrum life.
Yes.
Seems like he's doing pretty
he's
well
dropping
for
off
himself.
his kids at school. He seems to have a loving husband. And then that's when we get the flashback scene, and we learn that this guy used to be a hitman. And actually,
so how does that happen? How can you tell you're in the past, first of all?
They say before in text.
Oh, okay, so they just straight up tell you. I thought maybe a color scheme or a texture scheme.
Yes, it's also kind of more colorful and dark in the past storyline.
Yeah,
and
one of the things they do seem to take from the book is that the big heist has already gone down. And so what you're witnessing throughout the entire series, or the 8 episodes, is just like little trickles of information, kind of like with Kaleidoscope and Netflix's thing where you could watch it out of order. And so this is just Joe's perspective. And but when you see him in the heist and in the picture on the cover, he's wearing this mask. And it's his bottom half of his face. It's not like a full mask.
We don't even get to the heist this episode. We don't actually even know that there is a heist that's going to be going on. Why does they explain that there's a plan at the very end of the episode? Diane, who is the person who kind of gets Joe to join
Gemma
the
Arterton,
mission.
yes.
She takes the role of the professor from Money Heist because she's like, and here's the plan, and then it cuts to credits. We don't even know what it is.
People have compared her to Helen Mirren from Fast and Furious. Where she's kind of, and then the Nick Fury sort of role, but she's kind of hardcore,
yeah, because what happens when we first go to the flashback is Joe, he is working for this criminal, and that criminal is brought into a room with other criminals, and they're all
criminals. So what sort of criminal are we talking about?
He is a security guard for a criminal. Like this guy, who I think his name is Don, that's his first name. He's supposed to be one of the higher ups.
What I'm asking is, does he have a specific quality? Because the classic caper, which we went over in Kaleidoscope as well, it usually has a bunch of TV tropes. Who are the criminals? How Joe being the muscle, and you said Diane is the brilliant person, then who is this other guy?
Well, this isn't. This was just to introduce what Joe was. Like, Diane isn't in this flashback scene. This was just to show that Joe kills people, because when they go into this room full of criminals, and this guy is a security guard for this one big criminal, suddenly those criminals want to take out Joe's boss.
So they're not... Okay.
So Joe just whips out a gun and ends up taking out everyone. You see him stabbing people, you see him killing people, and he's able to get his boss and himself out of there.
So he becomes John Wick for a few minutes.
Yes, that's a good comparison.
And so when I saw Nathan Stewart-Jarrett in Misfits, he was this ultra skinny. He was trying to be an athlete.
Yes.
Like, that was his whole deal.
A runner.
A runner, exactly. And they are not muscly. They're not people who you would assume. And I heard that he did bulk up for the role, but like, did he sell it?
Yes, he kicks ass in this. In fact, it was really a pro for the show, and I didn't think I was going to give it this, that he's gay, because you don't see a lot of that in TV shows where like the badass who's able to take out all these people
I
is
will
gay.
challenge you, wasn't Laserhawk also that way?
Yeah, but
like
Laserhawk is a cartoon.
And he also like was just the all-star merciless killer.
Yeah, cartoons though, they go crazy, like, and that's futuristic.
So they don't count. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about actual things like in Culprits. And so yeah, he turns into John Wick, he's able to save his boss, and then that's when Diane kind of goes to him and is like, I have this job for you, it will be paid 7 figures, low 7 figures, and then we cut back to the present. So
low 7 figures.
So when we cut back to the present, this is again another storyline that I guess feel like they threw in there because he's involved in a 3-way crash. Joe gets up in the middle of the night, he sneaks out so that Jules doesn't see him, he's wanting to go to the store, and then suddenly there is a car that is just not paying attention as he's at a stop sign, and then another car crashes into that one, and then crashes into his car. So he's involved in a crash, there's someone that's badly hurt that ends up surviving the crash, but she's completely knocked out, and then there's a hit and run situation because the third car just decided to take off, and Joe is able to get the license plate number for it, and he even gives his witness not testimony, but his assessment of the situation at the cop's place.
Yeah,
where they're
taking
interviewing him.
Yeah.
Right. So that was that was another scene that they decided, or storyline that they decided to throw in there. And then
wait, so that didn't have anything to do with the killer that's after him?
No, that's what I'm saying. They didn't even focus on the killing until the very end of the episode.
Do you get to see this guy? Is he dressed like a Scream character or something?
Yeah, well, his face, he's wearing a mask, the person that killed Marcello Bari. But we don't actually know who that is. It could have been the person, I was even thinking maybe that was part of the hit and run and drove away. But that's
what I was thinking too, just based on what you're talking about.
But the person that was badly injured that survived was really the cause of the crash.
Okay.
Unless that person was somehow in on it. I don't know. There's some type of mystery going on. And then we get another storyline where Joe, he's learning that they're going to be kind of building this house, and they're going to be knocking down some trees in this forest. So he has to get a bag of money. I assume that's a bag of money from the plan that they keep on teasing in the before storyline. This is still the present storyline? Yes. All right. Yeah. And I'm glad.
And so this is all the stuff that they got from, like, obviously the job worked. Just like the perfect crime worked, and so he stores his money underground somewhere, or where is it?
He actually puts it in the back of the truck, so when he gets in a crash, he quickly takes the money out of his trunk and throws it into the garbage.
Oh.
And then when he tries to go back for it after he gives his thing to the cops, he sees that the trash pickup has already put it in their car, so he has to jump into the trash and he has to get it.
That was a dumpster dive for millions of dollars.
That was probably the best scene or sequence because it took 10 minutes. But you see what I mean when I'm saying that, like, there's like 6 different storylines going on, and I don't know which one to focus on.
It's certainly busy. It does bring to mind, though, the first one being Shameless, where Carl has that bag of money that he uses to help, I think, purchase their house back. And then also, what was the On My Block show, where the whole first season, one character was like obsessed with that treasure map and then found a ton of money hidden underneath, I think, their football field.
And one show I bet that you didn't expect me to compare this to is The Americans, because when we flash back to the storyline, it turns out the cops learned that Diane and Joe had a talk, and the cops bring Joe to this remote location. He's supposed to be a personal trainer. He doesn't even actually go by Joe in the backflash. He goes by David before he ends up having to scrap that identity. Mm-hmm. But they talk to him and they're like, we want you to accept the job and we want you to be our eyes and ears. And he just is denying it the whole time, being like, I didn't speak to Diane. I don't know who that is. And they're even showing him pictures of him at the museum where he spoke to Diane, and he's still just denying it and being like, I'm a personal trainer.
So this is all a test.
Yes. And then later on, that's when Diane walks out of nowhere, and the people that were supposed to be cops are really part of the mission.
Did it fool you, though?
I mean, it fooled me, but...
Like when they tried to do that in Saw 10, it didn't really fool me.
It didn't work.
Here, the guy was being pulled up by the taxi, and then these guys come out with masks on, and you're like, yeah, they probably work for the place that are just checking to make sure that he's not going to squeal.
And then by the end of the episode, the reason why Joe starts to freak out a little bit is he sees an article where Marcello Bari, the guy at the beginning who got his brains blown out, is dead, and he was a stuntman for a film. Really, though, Marcello Bari was part of the mission.
Sure.
And that's really where the connection comes into play at the very end of it. So I had it as a pro because I was never really bored watching the show with all of the things that was going on. Mm-hmm. But I also had it as a con because it was really hard to tell. And once again, I don't know what the main plot
What do you mean by it was hard to tell? Like what time period you were in, or really hard to tell what the plot was trying to
Sometimes there was way too many backflashes and forwards in the episode.
It got a little herky-jerky for you?
Yes, but also in the first scene, it's like, okay, well, I guess that this guy who killed Marcello Bari is supposed to be hunting down everyone that was in part of this operation.
Maybe he was part of the operation. Maybe he's just someone who's tracked them down. Maybe he is the equivalent of, again, to Fast and Furious, the Jason Momoa character.
Yes, right.
Who was just like on the sidelines seeing what they did when they stole a bunch of money or whatever.
But also, what's with this rundown store? And it doesn't even seem like Jules knows what Joe used to do in his background life, as well as the kids, and also the 3 car crash scene that happens.
Does it make you interested in checking out because I can tell you this, when they got greenlit to make the series, they were told that it was only going to be 1 season. This is a true miniseries in that they made a beginning, middle, and no cliffhanger.
Oh, okay. So
that
there's
is
not
quite different.
So this is a limited series,
absolutely. And so there is a complete end. And telling you that, does that make you want to watch it more because now you know that they're not going to keep leading you on?
Watch it more, sure, but I'm probably not going to watch it anyways. How many episodes is it supposed to be? Because this was an
it's like an 8-hour movie. It's an 8-hour movie.
This was 57 minutes.
But Curtis from The Misfits was a fun watch.
he carries the show. He's the best part of it.
Like they said, he's supposed to be the linchpin. They spent a ton of time making it. It was 135 days. It was shot during the pandemic.
Wow.
4 different countries: Canada, UK, Norway, Spain. Same street in Manchester as Peaky Blinders was filmed, and also Captain America and The Crown. The main complaint I've also heard about it is it's one of those shows that you have to not think too hard about.
Yeah.
One of those shows that you kind of have to turn your brain off of and enjoy. But
there's no through line though. There's no theme between all the different storylines aside from Joe being in the middle of it.
And disjointed works as a perfect word for it. You didn't even mention some of the other characters, so I assume we didn't get to them yet. One of them is Kirby Cowell-Baptiste. She was in Barry and Digman and The Sandman, but she plays an officer or someone named officer.
That might have been the officer that was questioning them. If it wasn't, then I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think she might have been part of the crew.
That's why I'm saying the officer that was part of the crew that was questioning him. Yes. That might have been her, but I'm not 100% sure.
And there's a guy named Devil, a person named Frankie, but you really didn't talk about too many names other than Jules and Joe and Diane.
Well, I think that's because Joe
and the main guy who died.
Joe being the main storyline. I only care about his characters, also including Jules and his kids as well. But all the other characters, even Diane, I guess I don't really care what happens to them. They haven't proven themselves to be a character that you should care for yet.
You don't have any idea how much I wanted to grill you on the fact that a bottom face mask does nothing to hide your identity and how stupid it would be to go into any sort of situation, caper or not, where you're trying to hide yourself and you're just wearing a face mask. Like, that makes no sense. Especially when your hair is so, like, notable. Like, no offense to Joe, but, like, you can tell who that guy is.
Well, it reminds me of John Wick. It reminds me of
freaking Larry Fitzgerald.
But the Continental had those same characters that only had face masks and not any type of, like, you could still see their eyes.
But they're not really trying to hide themselves. These people are trying not to get caught by the cops. Another thing about it is that, like, what would you compare this show to?
I mean...
This is what they were influenced by. Takers, Inside Man, the Asphalt Jungle, Oceans franchise. Did you get any
franchise, maybe from the bank heist that I'm assuming is going to happen. Takers, though, wasn't that the 2010 Paul Walker movie?
Yeah, I'm mixing what was influencing not only the TV show, but also influenced the book.
Oh,
so,
okay.
And the book actually came out, I think, in 2018. It was published then, but they're still, I think they re-released it or something rather recently. There's Money Heist, which you can compare it to television-wise. You can also compare it to Kaleidoscope, or I've heard Lupin as well.
Lupin would be an interesting one. I'm going to give the show a 5 out of 10. I do credit Disney with giving us something way darker. Like that was also a part of the fun of watching it all.
Yeah.
But there's just too much going on, and I think that they have to simplify the stories. I was also wondering when we saw the very end of the episode and everyone being involved in the plan, if maybe Joe was just this one episode and then one of the other characters was going to be a different episode. But it just sounds like Joe is going to be the main character throughout the series.
No, I think you're right that it will concentrate on other people, but kind of like with Skins and how Tony was the first episode, but also probably the main character of the first season, because even when they're going through the other people's storylines, they'll go back to Joe and show what he's doing, and you'll connect with him maybe the most. Mm-hmm. Again, the linchpin of the series, that means something. Your rating of a 5 actually falls in line with what the IMDb score is now. Yesterday was like a 6.4. Today it's a 5.6. I don't know where it's going to settle, but as far as reviews go, there aren't a ton of them out there because I don't think a lot of people know about this show.
And I was going to say the IMDb rating being a 5.6, probably not a lot of people have rated it either.
It's in the hundreds right now, so definitely not a lot, but the actual critical reviews have been pretty consistent down the line, 3 to 4 out of 5. So they've been okay.
Okay, so people like it.
Yes, nobody's been like ecstatic. No one said 5 out of 5. Uh-huh. The Guardian did give it a 4 out of 5. Radio Times gave it a 3 out of 5. Mashable liked it, saying that if you're looking for a heist series that follows the formula of time jumps, action sequences, and a compelling cast to boot, Culprits is worth a watch. iNews gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Digital Spy also gave it out of 3 out of 5 stars. You're also noticing the names of the places that I'm talking about, or the newspapers or whatever are not like big ones.
Yeah.
So it clearly hasn't like hit the mainstream yet. One thing that is also interesting is that because we've now done a series with Nathan Stewart-Jarrett, and we also did one with Antonio Thomas, still up. We also did one with Robert Sheehan, Umbrella Academy.
That was 3 years ago, but yeah.
Joe Gilgan was in Brassic. Now
Ewan Ryan,
Ewan Ryan is the next one. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Like he has. We we weren't doing the podcast during Game of Thrones, but I mean, that would have been a perfect one. He was in that for a while, right?
I mean, you could say that he started off, maybe kicked off all these people being in these shows.
Yeah, he is the first build on Netflix. Or sorry, on Wikipedia when you go to Misfits. Iwan Rihan.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and an ironic twist, if you remember when we did Kaleidoscope, it was at the beginning of this year. It was literally our first show this year. So it will be part of our rundown at the end here. But the sentiment for Netflix at that time had gone real sour. Okay, password sharing, the crackdown for that had just been announced, and the rumors. Yeah. So it was all about how like this show was supposed to be their claim to say, hey, this is why you deserve to pay for what we have, and I was just not into it.
Kaleidoscope got like a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, yeah.
Over the last year, Netflix, I think, has improved its branding a little bit. It has continued to raise its prices, but I think people have gotten used to the new strategy of not sharing passwords, and they did excel last quarter, and if you're concerned with stocks. Disney, though, is facing a lot more criticism now because they are also hiking up their subscription prices at a kind of drastic rate. They only came into being a few years ago, Disney Plus.
Yes, like 2019.
And they've already, the next price hike is going to effectively double what they originally came in at.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they also got rid of this thing called, that some people used a lot, Group Watch, which allowed you to watch the program and then someone somewhere else to watch the exact same program at the same time.
Hulu had the same thing, yeah.
Yes, but they got rid of it. And Hulu is controlled by Disney, so I wouldn't be surprised if Hulu got rid of it
as well, yeah.
So people have been really upset about that. I don't think this show is going to solve the problem, but it is nice that they made a concise television show that no one has to go in and think we're never going to get a conclusion to it.
And also gory deaths like that you get in this show are even more gory than something like NBC or CBS when you get the procedurals like Law and Order or The Irrational or anything like that.
Remember when Deadpool first got, because they're under Fox and then Disney bought Fox or something, and everybody was concerned that they were going to decrease the bloodshed?
Yeah.
They've still managed to keep some programming. It's not Fantasia. I mean, Fantasia's going to keep it light. The last thing I'll say is that Disney Plus is also going to come out with another heist story rather soon. I found that crazy. The Artful Dodger, which is, of course, that Oliver Twist character, and the person it's a period heist drama.
Right.
And the person who's going to be playing the Artful Dodger is Ferb. Or Thomas Brody Sangster. Remember, the Artful Dodger's only supposed to be 15, 16 years old, and Thomas Brody Sangster is going on 50.
Wait, what?
No, I mean, he's so old, but he always plays the younger character.
He was in Nanny McPhee 20 years ago.
And he was only a 30-year-old, fresh-faced 30-year-old. As a kid. No, and David Thewlis is going to play Fagin. That's the grouchy guy who controls all the kids. All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.